I wish to introduce the next lecture from Ronald and Erik Rietveld, founder of the experimental studio RAAAF in Amsterdam. Just a few words to explain. The Global Award for Sustainable Architecture has already included engineers, sociologists, mathematicians, or landscape architects. Today, with Ronald and Erik, is being presented an architect artist and a philosopher, brothers, founder of this RAAAF studio. What do? They call special intervention the artifact they create and they produce into inhabited space in order to question it. In particular, they used those artifacts to question the great historical infrastructure by which mankind always wanted to control the territory or the nature. They do so to question this heritage, the meaning of this heritage in the past and in the future. The Bunker 599 intervention, for example, focused on one of the 700 structures of the new Dutch waterline, a very long military defense dike built from the 19th century. From this huge military infrastructure, Utrecht and other cities, areas of Netherlands could have been defended, but it was by flooding all the lowlands of the country. A line of defense, by the way, as willingly indestructible than potentially destructive. The Studio RAAAF will show us how it turned. I must explain that this waterline is an historical monument of Netherlands. Of course, it's important. And you will see how RAAAF turned this contemporary sourcing perception of this so lethal waterline that would have flooded the country had the state given the order. Other RAAAF works have similarly questioned other structure that had been conceived indestructibly defensive or controlling the nature in the Netherlands, in the world. They work all the world. They work in Cappadocia, in Vienna. They are artists and performers in the wide space. Some of them intervention reveal now, by example, that climate change renders this huge system useless. Most of them encourage all of us to reflect on our material, social, and technological environment. This artistic think and do tank is also, for us, that's why this Global Award, an experimental architecture practice. Why? At first, because RAAF's intervention influenced public action. The bunker has influenced the Dutch monument policy, by example. Secondly, and most important, and maybe it's my point of view, maybe RAAF will not agree with me. I think that interventional RAAF give maybe to architecture the symbolic place that statuary had in the symbolic role of illustrating our collective narrative. Until the last century, remember, the urban statuary, the stairs, the mausoleum, the memorials were sufficient to condense collective memory in the cities, in the landscape, in the villages. But nowadays, this statuary is no longer enough, is no longer on the scale of our emotion. No doubt since the Second World War. In Berlin, Peter Eisenman Shoah Memorial, an entire urban space, has brought about this change. The founder of RAAF intervened to provoke this larger questioning of history because they have understood that architecture today is scaled for must take on this role of activating consciousness. Dear RAAAF Studio, the screen is yours, and I hope you agree.
Thank you for this kind introduction, and yeah,
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we actually don't have to give the lecture anymore. No, it was really good. Thanks. Erik is at another location, so I'm in the studio in Amsterdam, and I will start with the presentation. Erik, you can of course add if you miss something.
I'm at a place where they're doing a demolition outside that was not scheduled, so I'm happy that I can put my sound off and that Ronald can do the PowerPoint.
Okay, now that sounds good. I'm going to share my screen and then I start with presentation. Yes. Okay. Is it visible for everybody?
Yes.
Yes, okay. This is a bunker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, you already gave the introduction to Bunker 599. I will come back to that soon. First of all, RAAAF is an experimental studio and we make art-based explorations. So it's, of course, I have a background in architecture, and architecture is necessary to make what we do. It's really important, but often it is about art commissions, and architecture and art blend, visual art blend together in the projects, together with philosophy, because Erik is a philosopher at the University of Amsterdam, a Socrates professor in Twente, in the Netherlands. And together we run the studio. I'm an artist-architect. And we work with young talents, and not for a day, a week, a month, but for many years. We bring them in the studio, and over time they grow and start themselves their own practice afterwards. For example, Anna Makic, the lady standing in the black and white picture, has now her own practice, very well-known architect in the Netherlands, who speeches all around Europe. So a group of young talent around us. And if we make projects, we expand. So the studio is very small, but we expand with a group of people, even to 30 people. But we always go back to a small core, a small team. Bunker 599 was made together with Atelier de Lyon. It was my initiative in 2008, I think, to do something in the new Dutch waterline, because Erik and I grew up in the area you just introduced. The new Dutch waterline was a waterline running through the middle of the Netherlands. I will go one slide further to protect the west side of the Netherlands, Holland. Known as Holland. The whole country is called the Netherlands, and Holland was the rich part which should be protected. And we did this by flooding areas to avoid Germans to enter the Netherlands. So what we wanted to do is actually, this is in the low part of the Netherlands. The blue part you see, the blue, green and blue part is actually the part below zero. So many works of RAAAF are taking place in this part if we make projects in the Netherlands. And this is really in the middle. And we thought there are so many objects in the new Dutch waterline that are not seen, and not, it's about a historical structure, but you should also reveal its meaning in its contemporary context. And we wanted to do one intervention that opens up a new perspective on the 700 bunkers in the new Dutch waterline. These bunkers are spread over the country, as I said, a structure of 80 kilometers long, and they appear like this in the landscape. And what we wanted to do is to cut at a strategic point along a highway through one bunker. And we did a proposal. RAAAF makes its own projects. There are often no commissioners that give us a call and say, can you do this for me? We initiate these works ourselves. We wanted to cut through this seemingly indestructible structure, this object of war, and through a monument because it was a municipal monument. And we said, if you want to bring this idea of this meaning to a contemporary context, we should cut through it once. And if we cut through one, you reveal also the interior of these 700 other bunkers. So we did this, and it took 5 years to cut through policy, but it took just a month to cut through concrete. So once we got all the money, we could do it, but to convince all monument parties took a long time. After we have been cutting through the bunker, it has become a national monument within a year. And 2 years ago, it has been listed as UNESCO World Heritage as part of the new Dutch waterline. So the things you see in the work of RAAAF are equally important to the things you don't see. You see a cut through a seemingly indestructible object, the bunker, but you don't see that we have been cutting through this monument, which is equally important to the work of RAAAF. Space. Many of our work is about taking stuff away from the planet rather than adding too much. So making space by taking away stuff, a world which is filled with stuff and images, to create a poetry of absence. And also, as I already said, theoretically, Erik is also involved as a philosopher. We produce also papers. Hardcore heritage is a kind of thinking on, it's about imagination for preservation. This was a publication in Frontiers of Psychology. So the work reaches much further than just the professions of visual art and architecture. And it also influences, as you already said in the introduction, policies. In this case, the Agency for Cultural Heritage of the Netherlands. They use this as a reference, as another way of thinking about heritage. Another way of thinking is not only about heritage. I just show a couple of projects to illustrate our way of thinking. We were also asked to make the Office of the Future by the Chief Government Architect of the Netherlands. Rather than making a building, we were interested in what does it actually mean to work in an office and to be with your body in space. We discovered that actually sitting, as I'm doing myself right now, because all the objects, the testing objects we used to have, like these models, to actively standing are now gone at the moment. But we were researching how can you let your legs work during the day, because that's where it is about. If you talk about sustainability in the working environment, everybody is thinking about the building. Nobody thinks about the body in space, and therefore it's necessary to put pressure on your legs during the day. And that's how we made the end of sitting installation. Then an important note, affordances is in the work of Erik a very important notion, and it's also influencing the way we work. So the possibilities for action provided by the environment. We don't think in objects, in stairs, or in chairs, or in tables if we want to renew the working environment, but we think in the terms of affordances, the possibilities for action. So we started with taking away all chairs and tables. And what does it mean if you want to keep pressure on your legs during the day in different positions? How can we work in different positions to keep your body actively during the day? So we did, and we do this in many different ways. We are making mock-ups constantly, one-to-one, so testing things one-to-one on your body. In the end, this was this already introduces different working positions, and we integrated all these testing models in one giant landscape, a new working landscape that used to be also a place for observation for scientists, movement scientists, who have been observing how people working and compared it to a normal working environment. Conclusion is that people are more actively, the guy on the left-hand side seems to sit, but he's standing actually. All these new working positions are represented in this landscape for different lengths of different bodies. And you will find your place and switch over time during the day because it starts to get uncomfortable. And that's exactly what needs to happen in the working environment if you want to be actively working during the day. So you should move from position to be active. What works for the lady in the front with the long hair on this spot doesn't work 3 meters ahead. So it's not about the design of the landscape as an aesthetic thing, but it's based on working positions. And again, papers are published by movement scientists afterwards. So again, you see that the work is much more than an object for architecture or visual art, but reaches quite far. The idea is to have an openness to radically different practices. So we are not going to design another chair. There has been designed 1 million chairs already in history, but we are creating a complete new landscape. We are not going to preserve heritage, but we want to introduce a completely new vision on heritage, that you sometimes have to cut through a monument to reveal its meaning. We also showed, many people probably saw this one, also at the Venice installation, we showed the potential of space in the Netherlands. Everybody said the Netherlands is a densely populated country, but there is a lot of public and governmental heritage empty for 5 years, so or more even, and nothing is happening in between. Also the Dutch pavilion, the French pavilion, the English pavilion is vacant for a long period. The Dutch pavilion was already vacant for 39 years because the biennial is just a couple of months or half a year. And the rest of the year, there was nothing. It's a wasteland in Venice. So we wanted to reveal that the potential of empty space in the Netherlands, also in Venice, because the Dutch pavilion is on Dutch soil, like the French pavilion is on French soil, Spanish on Spanish soil, that in the Netherlands, there is a lot of vacancy. We wanted to represent that there in the pavilion that has been standing vacant for 39 years. So we left a pavilion completely empty. Most of the visitors first thought, oh, there are conceptual Dutch again. But when you went up to the stairs, you saw a sea of vacancy representing 50,000 years of public and governmental vacancy in the Netherlands, small country. And we made a Dutch Atlas of Vacancy. It's a huge atlas to show that it's not about a blue foam. No, it's about real buildings with real locations, with real sites, with real potential. So we wanted to reveal the potential of all these buildings rather than filling them with new program. Again, a new paper was published, which is really important in the research for Erik, A Rich Landscape of Affordances. So also in the Dutch Atlas of Vacancy, we showed the affordances of vacancy to the world. That's what we wanted to reveal. Deltawerk // the last project I'm going to show, is again below sea level in the blue part, blue-gray part of the Netherlands, or blue-green part. And it's a unique place in the world that also tells something about living in a country below sea level. This is the storm surge barrier, also sometimes called the Eighth World Wonder. The massive dam that has been constructed in the Netherlands, in the Delta. And everybody knows this. And in the Netherlands and outside also, a lot of people know about it, of course. But what is really well known is, of course, this works made below sea level. But less known is the experimental playground, you could say. There's an enormous forest. There is a little boat on the foreground in the water. Then you see the scale of this forest. In this forest, there are it's an open laboratory, a hydrodynamic laboratory where they tested all the delta works. And it's a unique place where people made complete rivers, scale 1 to 10, 1 to 10 or 1 to 20. They constructed it by hand. 75 engineers after the Great Flood in 1953 in the Netherlands. 75 engineers worked constantly on testing all types of delta works. How can we deal with shipping, ships in rivers, and also giant water structures? Later on, even foreign groups came here, and we also made, for example, the port of Lagos, the harbor of Lagos, the president of Nigeria, Nigeria with the president of the Netherlands. Foreign delegations were invited to come here to see how delta works could be made, also in other countries. Most important is in this country below sea level, we want to build an indestructible Holland. And therefore, we even made giant testing installations. For example, this is a wave generator, which generated waves of 3 meters high. And meanwhile, we know that indestructible Holland is not something that is for sure. Absolutely not. The power of water, we have seen it the last decade in an extreme way again. So we questioned on this spot in at this giant water model, is an indestructible Holland, is that possible in the future? We think it will be a tough thing to keep going on like we do in the Netherlands, to use the toughest structures to keep the sea outside. It's with sea level rising, almost a mission impossible on a term of 100 to 200 years. The wave generator, see this human on the right-hand side on top, then you have a little bit an idea about the scale of the waves they made in this testing object. This is just one of the 40 testing objects in the forest, but the largest one. And we got a phone call, and that's how often projects start. There is no commission once again. Also for the end of sitting, no commission. We generated it ourselves. So we don't do tenders, no competitions, nothing. We generate our work ourselves. And we fail a lot, but sometimes we succeed. In this case, we got a phone call to do something with this old wave generator, which is 250 meters long, so enormous object. And it's in the forest of all these old testing models, which has become ruins. And we always start investigating with every project in history. And we discovered that this whole structure has been built on the ground level. And we thought we can also take away this ground, this is 1978, and make a structure that reveals actually or show the vulnerability of living below sea level. So we took away all ground around it. There was 6 meters of ground laying against the walls, and put this whole structure itself into water, cut pieces out of the walls and turn them 90 degrees. So we wanted to show this testing delta work, you could call it, the vulnerability of living below sea level. That's what it does. We blasted the complete concrete structure open by sandblasting to also introduce space for new forms of life. I will come back to that soon. All types of use are happening over there. People are swimming there. And it has become a national monument as well as part of the Waterloopbos, the whole area. And as I said, it also introduced space for new forms of life, biodiversity. Moss, you could say moss specialists were involved to create a new substrate for all kinds of mosses. And that's what I'm going to show. I'm almost at the last slide of my presentation. But the transformation is now taking place over time. It will become a completely different structure taking over by mosses ferns, and it's already going on right now. So even when it has been raining, it becomes already completely green, and you see it's going to be taken over, this massive structure. Over time it will transform into something else. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you really for this very impressive project, and may I add that we are expecting a lot of you in the future for your next project, please.
Thanks.
So that-
Thank you.
Thank you so much.